Good morning, good morning. Good afternoon, good evening is one of them. This public meeting of the Board of Education for September 5th, 2023 is called to order. All items being considered this evening are posted on the PPS website under the Board and Meetings tab. This meeting is being streamed live on PPS TV service website and on channel 28 and will be replayed throughout the next 2 weeks. Please check the district website for replay times. All right, good evening again. Director Scott and Director Wong will be joining us virtually. Today we are going to be celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. We're going to be bringing a resolution to recognize Hispanic Heritage Month in Portland Public Schools. Superintendent, would you please introduce the first item?
Yes, good evening, Chair and Directors. It is actually a unique time here at the start of the school year. We have a couple of our team members that are going to come up and introduce this proclamation. And I think our board manager, Roseanne Powell, is going to kick us off.
Thank you. Yes. Good evening, Director, Student Representative, and Superintendent Guerrero. I've been asked to speak tonight about why it is important that we take time to recognize Hispanic Heritage Month. Early in my career here at Portland Public Schools, I had the privilege of working in a Spanish dual language immersion school. There is so much joy to experience working in schools, but especially in a school that was filled with abundance of cultural and linguistic affirmation. A school that celebrated students whose first language was Spanish, seeing their emerging bilingualism as a gift. My own dad immigrated to this country as a young boy, and unfortunately did not see his first language as an asset or a gift. Despite his early struggles to learn English, he loved school and his love for it was contagious. Fortunately, I attended a school, pardon me.
It's okay, we with you. We here, we got you.
That valued my heritage and modeled curiosity and respect for other cultures. This is something all students deserve. All students deserve to have their heritage and backgrounds celebrated as part of their educational experience. All students deserve to be inspired to pursue their dreams after learning about artists like Frida Kahlo or scientists like Ellen Ochoa. It is our community's racial, cultural, and linguistic diversity that enriches all of us and fosters empathy to help make schools more inclusive environments. Thank you for acknowledging September 15th through October 15th as Hispanic Heritage Month in Portland Public Schools. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, thank you.
And I will read the be it resolved in Spanish. Se resuelve que la Junta Escolar de las Escuelas Públicas de Portland promueve el 15 de septiembre al 15 de octubre como el mes de herencia hispana y alienta a los miembros del personal, a estudiantes y a la comunidad a observar, reconocer y celebrar la cultura, herencia y contribuciones de los hispanos y latinos en Portland y a través de los Estados Unidos, con actividades culturalmente relevantes y aprender del pasado y entender las experiencias que han formado los latinos en Estados Unidos.
Thank you.
Motion.
Second.
Second, all right. Director Green, motion. Director DePass, second. All in favor? Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
All right. Looks like we have a pass 7-0.
With.
Oh, with the student director? Sorry.
Yes, enthusiastically.
Awesome, awesome. It passes 7-0 with the student director voting yes. Thank you. All right. So now we have next is the superintendent's report.
We do, and Terry, if you're back there, if you can get our slide deck up. Just a few slides for you this evening, but it seemed appropriate to do a quick roundup of our back to school here at PPS. So directors. Let me go to the first slide here. I'm thrilled to be presenting my sixth back-to-school report for you.
Quack, quack.
This time of year is always exciting. Our schools are filled with joy, anticipation, potential. We see our students charging into the new school year, sometimes with a passing goodbye to their families, hugging friends, shaking hands, exploring new learning spaces. Our principals, our teachers, bus drivers, nutrition staff, custodians, and counselors, they've all been providing a positive, welcoming experience as our students return to school or start school. I know that they all remain collectively focused on student success. Everywhere I went last week, and hopefully everywhere you went too, I saw our teams laying the groundwork for a productive and supportive school year for our students. I personally visited several schools on day one. I started my day at Sitten Elementary alongside Chair Hollins and other special guests like State Senator Lou Frederick and Representative Travis Nelson. Directors, you've heard me say again, how important it is that we let our students know we believe in their brilliance and potential. And at Sitten, they literally rolled out the red carpet to welcome students back. I'm going to show you a short video clip here. It's just a minute. I'm going to warn you, there's at least one very, very enthusiastic person highlighted here. Terry, if we could play that.
Remember, we're on a time limit.
Is here.
It's important that we keep reading.
All right, here we go. All right, friends, here we go.
They're rolling out the red carpet. The festivities are getting underway. That first day of school is here.
It's important that we keep reading over this summer because we need to practice. And I don't want a bunch of people not reading.
Why do we go back to school? Why do you have to come to school?
To learn. That's why you have to come back to learn.
And I want to wish everybody a fabulous first day of school. We are ready for you. We're here at Sitten Elementary this morning, one of our wonderful school communities.
Every year, the first day of school is really a celebration about being together in a community. And so we're really hoping this year to start the first day by planting the seeds for a really exciting, joyful, and focused new school year.
I'm excited for all the new math we're going to be doing.
We're anticipating some tremendous academic gains and growth here at Sitten Elementary. And we just want to put a spotlight on them because we know so many of our schools are working hard to really make sure that we're focused on student success.
Dapper Dan.
We had a very enthusiastic first day there. Thank you, Chair Hollins.
Yes, we love the key hits.
We have a few more slides.
There you go. You should maybe wear that.
You got a good way.
Well, after that experience at Sitten, our group moved over to meet with families at Cesar Chavez. We had a chance to welcome and introduce our new principal there, Jose Mesa. I was also excited to meet up with Director Wong at Kellogg and shadow one of our new principals there as well, Mr. Tai Nguyen. Directors, I know you've learned a little bit about Mr. Nguyen as a former Kellogg Middle School student. He had a short detour in Arizona, but he's back. He's here with us in his old neighborhood of Southeast Portland as our new principal at Kellogg. And Tuesday, when the sixth graders had the building to themselves, staff provided a wonderful orientation. Our principal and his team made sure that they had a strong start to their middle years experience there. So these are just a couple snapshots across our district. Each of you, I know, was out and about in our schools. All of our central office team were out in the schools as well. I've heard many stories full of a lot of the joy and the excitement. I know you felt it too. I'm sure each of you has additional observations from your own visits during this first week. But I think the bottom line is we're off to a good start. We're off to a great start, in fact. Since the slide is titled New Leaders, I also want to introduce, because it's tradition here and we haven't had a regular meeting yet in public, I want to introduce our newly appointed Deputy Superintendent for Business and Operations, Myung Lee. If I could ask him to just come up for a moment. It's customary to invite him to just say a couple words so you all know who he is. Myung?
Thank you. Thank you, Superintendent, and good evening, directors. It's great to be with you and student director as well for the first public meeting that I've attended, although I've seen several board meetings in committee and in executive session. Feels like a dramatic moment for me, so pardon my being a little stage struck if I am. So I can introduce myself. Superintendent Guerrero asked me to just say a little bit about my background. So first of all, I will share that I am a Korean-American immigrant who attended public schools myself from kindergarten through high school graduation. I grew up in Wilmington, Delaware, a small state, far away, but good public education was had by myself and all my classmates growing up. I am also a member of the LGBTQ community. My pronouns are him, he, him, his. It's great to be here. I have long come to Portland to enjoy the wonderful city, the wonderful offerings, the incredible beauty, natural beauty, and civic beauty that the city has to offer. I'm here now for a different kind of fun. I've never worked in Portland, but I'm having a really wonderful experience. Just finishing up my first month. So as Superintendent said, I am here to help for a time, and I'm trying my best to try to fill in for Claire Hertz, who left a while ago, a great big pair of shoes. And I have very small feet, so I'm trying to fill in the shoes as well as I can. I've been so thankful to the many colleagues that I've had a chance to meet, all of you directors as well. There are so many interesting, fascinating issues. I have the benefit of newness, so I'm looking at these issues with fresh eyes and sort of some innocence in my background, and hopefully I'm able to ask good questions and seek the benefit of patience and a welcoming nature, which I found everywhere that I've turned here in the school district. So look forward to being with you for the next several months, and thank you so much for your hospitality, and Superintendent for letting me introduce myself tonight.
Thank you. Welcome.
Welcome. Great to have you. Well, today also our kindergartners started today at PPS. I had a chance to start my morning at Chapman Elementary. It was great to speak with family members. We stayed for an hour to talk over coffee, who were dropping off their kindergartners for the first day. Parents had great questions as they started their educational careers with us. Principal and I were able to share a little bit of advice to some of their questions, things like, enjoy these moments. Your child will show tremendous growth as time goes by. Get to know the other families, because you're likely going to hear stories about fellow classmates, and you will become an important support for one another. And remember to ask your child about the small moments that may have happened in class or at school each day. What did you play at recess? What did you work on in art class? What book did the teacher read aloud today? So we were welcoming kindergartners at schools all over town today. You can also find a great little video clip on our social media channels of the clap-in ceremony this morning at Rose City Park. They had a wonderful welcome for the young scholars there. It's a wonderful tradition where the entire school helps to welcome new kindergartners. And then directors, I have a few of our chiefs who are going to join us up here. They each have an allowance of one slide and a few things that they're going to share from their areas just to round out our back to school. Kicking it off here is to share his observations of our school communities as well as all of our senior directors of schools is our chief of schools, Dr. Franco.
All right, thank you, Superintendent, directors. Pleasure to be here. I thought Superintendent's opening comments were absolutely accurate. It's been a great week, and as one principal texted me the other day on the first day, she said that it was a great first day of school. The kids are so excited to be back. So I think in summary, that is absolutely the truth. So I just wanted to highlight a few kind of big ticket things that we are excited about moving forward this year. First, I would want to shout out Harrison Park and Clark. Right, we got via SCGC, we got 2 new schools on, and so Harrison Park, the new middle school, and Clark Elementary. So we're very excited about that. Also, this year, especially at the middle school level, we are rolling out advisory. Consistent advisory in all of our schools 3 times a week for 25 minutes. Also the advent of CSA support, that's Campus Safety Associates, and also RJ coordinators. And I'm also happy to report that all middle school admin teams are intact, that we are full go with all our middle school admin teams. So we're very excited about that. Also, kudos to not only my team, but HR and comms. Each summer, technically we have July, which is supposed to be a downtime. The reality is it's also the peak of hiring season. And so we're excited that beginning this year, every school has a principal. We started out, when I first came in, we had 32 principal vacancies, and we were still hiring when we started in the fall. This year, we trimmed that by half. Principal retention is extremely important, and it's because we also promoted some folks, but we're very excited for the new leaders that we have. I think Superintendent had a few pictures with Ty Nguyen, the new principal at Kellogg, who's outstanding. Just because we are in a sense finishing out our enrollment and program balancing, and so this really is the year. And so we're excited for all of the not only new schools but programs to be fully in place. We've currently allotted, out of the 10 allocated FTE, 6.6 of that FTE to help bridge the gap. And of course, we still have some left over, which principals are currently kind of looking over and what they need, and they're providing access or feedback in regards to that. On Thursday, I believe you're all invited and are going to be attending summer graduation. And so we had, looking forward to celebrating seniors who have completed their high school graduation requirements, and be looking forward to celebrating them on Thursday, September 7th. This year we had a great Leadership Institute coupled with some outstanding teacher professional learning. And our mantra this year is one team, one goal, and together we are brilliant. Those of you who know of research, John Hattie talks a lot about this notion of collective efficacy, and this belief that if you believe the same thing I believe, that we can achieve together, and that's the single biggest indicator of student achievement. And so we're very excited to move together to make this feeling of Portland, this district, feel small. And we have collectively grabbed onto that approach, and I can say that collectively via the building leaders. And so we're really excited about those moves moving forward. So I was given one slide, 1 minute, and I think I've surpassed that. But there's so much I can talk about, but just wanted to highlight a few of the big ticket pieces. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Franco. And here with a staffing update, our Chief of HR, Sharon Reese.
Hi, good evening, directors. Our school, as Dr. Franco had alluded to, our school principals, central office teams have been hard at work and have been continuing to make progress in hiring and onboarding of new educators and our school-based staff. You see an update here of the information we provided about a month ago regarding staffing. Overall, we have 119 instructional vacancies. That represents about 57 now in core content areas, and of these positions, we are at 6 elementary classroom, so homeroom positions vacant.
And of these positions, when you say instructional vacancies, are you counting just teachers, or is that also EAs and paraeducators?
Those are teachers.
Do we have the other information somewhere else on there, or no?
We have, so paraeducators up there's, I'm about to get there, to 54 vacancies with paraeducators. And about 28% of those have a candidate in a phase of hiring. Also, there, you should have in front of you a report. You asked for a school-by-school based report of where we are with hiring, so that's what it is in front of you right now. Going back to the slide, almost a third of those open positions are in some phase of hiring, so a candidate has been identified for those. CSI, TSI vacancies, this is, some of the areas that we provide additional support in is our TSI, CSI schools, and also schools with new principals. Those are the ones that tend to have a harder time catching up with regard to staffing vacant positions, especially as new principals come on board late in the process. And so what we are seeing in our TSI, CSI schools, which is consistent with what I reported a month ago, is that those instructional vacancies are roughly proportional to the overall representation of those positions. So we also have a new position this year across all schools, the instructional coach position. We are down to one vacancy for our instructional coach positions, and that vacancy is at DART. So that is my staffing update. I believe I'm turning it over to Chief Young.
Good evening. Operationally, we had a very successful first week. From a transportation perspective, our high school students used their free TriMet passes that we provided before the start of the school year. And we do have a handful of transportation vacancies on our contractor side, but we ran all 300 plus bus routes last week without any issue. We were able to cover any absences that we had with only some minor hiccups, I would say. Our project management teams wrapped up dozens of projects, many dozens of projects, both big and small. I highlighted a number of those a few weeks back, but playgrounds, lighting upgrades, and everything in between. Most of those have wrapped up. We do have some larger projects that continue into fall, which is pretty customary. Some of our big projects, like our large roof replacements and some other work like that. Our nutrition services staff, after serving almost 100,000 meals over the summer, served almost 77,000 meals just last week. So they are off and running and doing great. Lincoln High School held their first lap around the track last Thursday on their new track. And as Dr. Franco noted, our middle schools welcome their new campus security agents.
And rounding it out, Dr. Renard Adams with a quick snapshot from our attendance and enrollment.
Sure. Thank you, Superintendent. Good evening, directors and student director. Wanted to provide another brief enrollment update. As of September 1st, which was last Friday, we've registered just under 3,000 kindergarten students. As you're all aware, because the superintendent just mentioned it, kindergarten started today, and we expect to register and enroll additional kindergarten students over the next few weeks. We do anticipate meeting our projected enrollment numbers for kindergarten. At all levels of school, so elementary, middle, and high, we are seeing enrollment numbers that are slightly higher than our projections at this time. But I just want to remind the board and the public that these enrollment numbers are preliminary and will continue to firm up as we reach that 10-day drop mark for students in all grades, as students either regularly attend PPS schools or they do not show up here at PPS, and we need to remove them from our rolls. That 10-day mark this year begins on October 2nd because October 1st is a Sunday. We know that our principals and school teams are working hard to welcome students and families into this new school year, and we are grateful for their efforts in this regard. As is typically the case this time of year, Dr. Franco leads a team of myself and other staff in monitoring schools' enrollment to ascertain the need and extent for any fall rebalancing, and those decisions are ongoing. I don't think so.
All right, board, do you have any questions? All right.
119 vacancies of teachers? Yes, instructional positions, yes. What happened in the Yes, typically, so not all of those are classroom-based positions that would be eligible for a sub. We have increased a number of roles, like social workers aren't eligible for sub, counselors are only eligible for sub if the absence is going to be longer than a week. So our school teams identify resources as well as substitutes to bring together.
May I ask one follow-up as well? So of all of those positions, are they all currently in recruitment?
Yes.
Okay.
Some of those positions also are ads from set-aside funds. For example, addition of social workers happened just a few weeks ago, so we're late in the process to recruit those positions when we add them in August.
Are you feeling fairly confident?
Yeah, this is actually lower than the number of vacancies we've had in the past several school years. So we're actually seeing some improved conditions as well as a greater pool of subs that we have had before.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So just to follow on the staffing, I'd be interested of these, like how many are classroom teachers, to understand how many, which schools have classrooms in which we don't have a non-substitute teacher. We have a regular teacher in the classroom. Like I'm concerned a little bit about, well, not a little bit, like for example, Lane is a TSI school that still has 5 vacancies. If they're not student facing, maybe that's slightly different, but if they're all student facing, so I'd be interested in more detail on that. And also the issue of EAs, because I know those are vital supports in a lot of classrooms, especially when you have some of the classrooms at the sort of top end of the class size thresholds, and that historically that in the TSI and CSI schools, they have had more openings of EA. So I'm curious if we have that data.
We can get that information, yeah.
And then just in terms of the classroom teachers, do you anticipate going beyond like October 1st with any classrooms not, with all the classroom positions filled?
Well, we always have some level of turnover, right, that is happening, or people going on leaves and that kind of thing. So we never have 0 vacancies. And yeah, but yes, what we typically see is that our hiring cycle is completed by October. That also accounts for the timeline for additional FTE that are added because of additional budget allocations or grants or set-aside allocations.
Yeah, I was thinking more of like the instance, for example, at Roseway Heights, where we had a couple of, I guess last year or 2 years ago, where there was like no Spanish teacher the whole year. So I'm thinking that there would be, you know, there's obviously turnover, but just that we start the school year and don't have a teacher that then we continue into the school year with that.
Right. And those are extremely rare cases. They do happen. And that's when we pull on temp educators or substitute educators to address those vacancies.
I had a couple of non-staffing questions. Can I go ahead and ask them? Great. Well, I had a good start to the school year as well. Agree on that. Question about Harrison Park. I was super excited to go there to see it open as a middle school. I was surprised that it was still under construction. So I'm curious, do we understand there was firewalls that we didn't know that had to be constructed, but it's a very industrial looking school right now with open exposed, and it sounds like it's all safe, but it's just disappointed that we started the school year without it fully done. What's the timeline for completion?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't have all the details at my fingertips, but the Harrison Park it's a phase project, so construction will continue through the school year and through next summer. We knew with that scope of work it couldn't be completed in a series of summers because of the amount of work that needed to be completed with new roofs, an entirely new mechanical system, fire life safety systems as well. So when you have that amount of work, scope of work that has to happen, it either has to be in a series of summers, or the school has to be vacated, or you have to have parts completed during the year. And sometimes when you have to keep your systems online, like mechanical systems and fire life safety systems, they need to be active during the school year. So we phase around the students and the staff, and so we keep everyone safe, and we work in certain areas, and we move around the building.
So fall of 25, sounds so, no, fall of 24.
24, I believe was accurate,
Okay.
but let me double check that as.
And I know that the promise of air conditioning is like a huge thing that's going to be installed, but okay, so fall of, and then my last question is a transportation-related question, and I'm curious because of the uptick in violence occurring on Max and on some of the TriMet buses, whether, and knowing that that's what we depend on for our high school and many of our middle school students, what conversations we're having with TriMet about just security on our buses and Maxes that we're counting on students to get to school on.
Well, I think we'd all agree we're always concerned for student safety. That includes back and forth from school. There was, as you're probably aware, another unfortunate incident this past weekend in Southeast. Our safety and security services have remained in contact with PPB this weekend on that particular incident, and will remain in contact with them because we are concerned about making sure that we're monitoring and that precautions are taken and that we're making sure our students have situational awareness when they're coming to and fro school as well.
Any other questions from the board? Awesome, thank you guys.
Thank you, team.
All right, Student Director Silverstein, would you like to present?
Sure.
Yes.
Just letting, can you hear me? Good. Okay, just letting everyone know, this is a long one. There's a lot to get through. So first of all, a WELL student brought something to me. They wanted me to mention that they have already had a threat of violence against their school. Everything turned out to be fine, but as a student at Franklin, I'm all too familiar with this. Last year, we were plagued with bomb threats, which, while false, definitely made students fearful, and these are things that we carry with us. I want to acknowledge all of the WELL students and say we see you. I also want to remind you that while we do have efforts being made to increase school safety, I have my ID that we're all wearing now. This is a very real issue and one that needs to continue to have dialogue about it. As always, we need student voices in these discussions. Yeah, so thank you for sharing that to the WELL student. And then, sorry, I see people from DSC in the audience, so shout out to them. Thanks. So on a more positive note, we've headed back to school. I know this is not everyone's favorite time of year, but I hope everyone has something they're looking forward to. Sports and academics are all gearing up. Homecoming will be happening soon for many schools. JJ McDaniels, representative on the GSC, informed me McDaniels is next week. Okay. Yeah. So also, I think it was briefly mentioned that we have the summer graduation this Thursday, which honors our graduates who finished their requirements this summer. So congratulations. And thank you to the summer and evening scholars programs, which help our students recover credits and get credits early. I participated the previous summer. I'm a summer scholar. Woo! And then we had our first district student council meeting today, which was amazing. We have representatives from pretty much every school except for MLC, Alliance, and Roosevelt, who are working to get representatives from. And we talked just really mainly about like what are the issues we're seeing in our district and at our schools. We heard breakdown in communication, which is contributing to frayed relationships between students in both school and district leadership, a lack of school and district pride, safety within schools and on the way to schools, including on the Max, funding disparities, and then needing more transparency around funding, needing more student involvement and easier access to opportunities to get involved. And I have one of those opportunities where students can get involved, the Community Budget Review Committee, which makes recommendations on how the district spends its money. They're looking for new student members. You can apply at pps.net/cbrc, and the application is due September 22nd. So get on that. We would love to have you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Student Director Silverstein. Ms. Bradshaw, do we have any students signed up for a public comment?
We do not.
We do not, okay. All right, let's see. I get to step in. This is my first time doing this at a board meeting, and I'm super excited about this. I'm feeling loved in this room.
Just wait.
That's all right. Okay. It's the, no, we go into, nope, we do the student comment, and then it looks like we're going into the resolution to replace the Grant Bowl and the Buckman Field. Okay. If y'all couldn't tell, I was politically stalling as pastors normally do, to give us all time to gather ourselves and get the leaders back where they need to be.
Thank you, Director Green. So next, we'll be voting on a resolution to replace the Grant Bowl and the Buckman Field track, which is being brought forward by Director Scott and Director Brim Edwards. So I want to know if Director Scott would love to introduce this resolution.
Just because I'm virtual and my internet connection's a little iffy, Director Brim Edwards, did you want to say a few words?
Happy to do that, and thank you, Director Scott, for co-authoring, and as well as the assist from, and you'll never guess what part, from Chair Hollins. Just saying, it's kind of obvious. So in 2002 and 2003, Lincoln was replacing their track and field, which was really a mud pit, like as many other tracks and fields were in PPS. And they were going to have a state-of-the-art competition-level artificial turf field paid for with private funds. The grant community, I think I went to my first grant fundraising and community raising meeting in 2001. And the Cleveland community was also raising money privately from student groups, alumni, and student athletes for new, so that every one of our, so that those schools would have artificial turf fields and tracks that would be of high quality and could be used year-round. It was clear at the time that they were, there was going to be a group of haves and have-nots, with some schools having those fields and other school communities that didn't have the resources would continue to have just grass fields, which were not playable most of the year. So a project was started, the 10 Fields Project, was Places for Sport at the very beginning. It included PPS, community groups, alumni, Nike, lots of local businesses, lots of parents and student athletes, with the goal that as a community that all of our kids deserved a place to play in their neighborhood with a high quality track and field. Nike paid for a fundraiser and community building consultant to help raise money. And for 10 years, the project went on. PPS put in about $2 to $3 million and also a lot of technical expertise. Nike execs and Nike put in about $8 to $10 million. Alumni and community fundraisers from across the districts brought in about $6 to $7 million. And together, we made that a reality. The biggest challenges of the project, though, were the two track and fields that were not actually owned by PPS, that were owned by the city of Portland and managed by Parks, although they have been used both by Benson for, 100 years?
Yes.
100 years, and same thing with Grant, and that PPS has had a long relationship with Portland Parks, and we have many mutual interests. We have many of the same families and students and youth using our facilities. And so we've had a mutually beneficial relationship over the years. And in this particular case, It was important for PPS to work with Parks to, in order to make sure that the Grant and the Benson community also received the same sort of home turf that the other schools had. So there was an agreement and work, and in 2012, the Grant Field, which was paid for with significant contributions from PPS, Nadamakan Sue's, his family foundation, Parks, the city of Portland, and PPS, and that was replaced. And then at Benson, there was a similar fundraising combination, but also with St. Mary's and a soccer club, PCU. And the agreement at the time was that the fields and the track would be maintained by the district for their use, and also in cooperation with Parks on the 2 Parks properties. PPS has done that, and when the fields it reached the end of the useful life, which they do, and I think it's worth noting that the useful life actually allows a lot more use than if you have a grass field, which once it gets muddy, you really can't play on. It's oftentimes not safe. But when it reached its useful life, PPS has replaced it by building it into its facilities plan. And I should note that what happened with Buckman, even though the agreement was that the track and field, the fields would be done along with the track was never done. I know that Chair Hollins would want me to point that out, which was quite disappointing because, again, the goal was that every student, no matter what neighborhood they lived in or what school they attended, would have like a home field that offered them a high quality and safe experience. And so as these fields have reached their end of the useful life, as I say, PPS has replaced them. It's disappointing that when the Grant Field, that planning wasn't done, which is why in order to replace it so that there's no interruption to the student athlete experience. And so this resolution tonight does a couple things. It actually, from the board's perspective, says that there's an urgent need to ensure the Grant Bowl and the Buckman tracks are safe and usable for our students, and with as little delay and disruption to students and families as possible. It also directs the superintendent to identify financial and other resources to replace the tracks and fields, and work with Parks to engage in a process to get them replaced. It also calls on the City of Portland to provide PPS with a long-term lease of the Grant Bowl and the Buckman track to avoid future disruptions and quickly replace them. And then finally calls on the City of Portland to expedite all permitting so the field and tracks can be replaced. And I think for me, the most important thing here is the long-term picture. As somebody who was a PIL student athlete and whose all 3 kids played on fields all over the city, I know how important that experience, and especially having the experience of playing on your own home field, is to our students. So I'm hopeful that we can move with due speed, and I'm also, like I say, one of the most important things is that we look for the long term, that the Grant and Benson community have some certainty that they will have that they're part of the district planning, and they have access to the fields, and that they have a home turf. And I know that Benson already has lights, but Grant doesn't have either lights or a stadium, and it's hard to plan if you just are basing that on a short-term planning cycle. So having a long-term lease from Parks so that we can provide these adequate facilities, not just adequate facilities, but good facilities for our student athletes is really important, and that's the spirit of this. It's just not just the replacement of this, the replacement of the Grant field, but also putting in place the Benson track, but also establishing a different long-term relationship with the city so that we have some certainty for our student athletes and equity across the district.
All right, thank you, Director Brim Edwards. All right, let's get to it. So, do I have a motion to adopt Resolution 6755?
So moved.
All right. Okay, we got a motion from, to pass, okay. Who was the second?
I'll second that.
Oh, all right, so, okay, we got it. All right. Oh, Lord. Do we have any board discussion?
Yeah, Chair Holmes, if I may, first of all, I'm really glad I handed the baton to Director Brim Edwards. She has such a long and rich history with this issue, so that was great to sort of give that in terms of why we're here and what we want to do. The only thing I will just add, I'll echo everything she said and agree with it, and just say that for me, the important thing is thinking about it. You know, when assets fail, we need to treat that issue with some urgency. And people have heard me use this example, but if we had a roof collapse at a school or fail, we would move students out. And then we would really work as quickly as we can to get those students back in the school. And we would pull out all the stops and we wouldn't let any bureaucratic hurdles get in the way. And I think for me, that was really the issue with this. It's the same thing. This is an asset that's failing, that's impacting our students and our families. And I don't want the bureaucratic issues to get in the way of solving those problems. And I say that as a bureaucrat. I think some people may know I worked for the city of Portland for 15 years. I work at Metro now. I'm obviously on the school board. It's not that these issues between governments are unimportant, but they should never take priority over the issue of actually fixing the problem. And so that's what I really wanted to see here. I do have one question about timing, and I'm going to ask the superintendent, and he may want to bring up staff, but some information that just came to light for me in terms of the impact that this field has on sports moving forward. One of the things this resolution does is it asks the district to move forward with this fix in the fall of 2023 so that we could get it done as quickly as we can so that it doesn't impact spring sports or beyond. My understanding is that spring sports may not be impacted even with the current state of the field. And so I'd love to hear a little bit from either the superintendent or staff about that issue.
Thank you, Director Scott. And Brim Edwards and team shares the urgency in moving this expeditiously. Of course, as we explore who can do the installation for us and how much time they would need to do that, either before spring season or immediately afterwards, to try to not interfere with the use of it in the spring, which it's still able to do. But do you want to add a little bit more to that, Chief Operating Officer Young?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, we are working with Portland Parks Rec right now on an agreement that would be a replacement of the turf as well as the track. And our goal is to have that operational as soon as possible. One thing I think there's been some confusion is with the current status of the field, it is not available for use for football and soccer, but it is available for use for spring sports. So it is safe for use for track and field, for softball and other activities that happen down there on spring, and of course during the school day for physical education and other needs. So we do want to get it replaced as quickly as possible. That said, we do know that there are tasks and phases and milestones that must be met to replace the turf field, including getting a contractor underway, actually building the turf out itself, and then installing it, including all the subgrade, the installation, the painting, and all that work. What we want to be very careful is the timing of this, is that we don't try to move so fast that we end up actually impacting the track and field for spring sports. We see that as something that we very much want to avoid. So right now we're looking at moving forward with this process and with construction and installing the new track and field after the spring season, so we are certain not to impact those students and that needs. That said, if there is an opportunity to do it sooner, we will explore that as well. It's just, it looks like a high risk proposition at this point in time.
Thank you. I just want to clarify also that the resolution does say directs the superintendent to identify financial and other resources to replace the field and tracks and to work with parks to engage in an emergency procurement process, in other words, not to hold it up, to secure a contractor in the fall of 2023. So even that's an expedited timeline, so we secure a contractor. Hopefully that's possible.
Correct. Yeah, that is something that we are moving on right now, is identifying that contractor and procuring that and negotiating that contract, as well as having those discussions with Parks. We actually have Parks representatives here tonight who are here because this is important, and they are involved, and we're working hand in
You
glove.
said we have park representatives here?
Yes, we do.
Oh, would you guys like to come down?
If Todd Lufgren,
Yeah, come
who is the
on
Deputy
by.
Director of Portland Parks and Rec, would like to come down.
Awesome. No?
Oh, this side. Good evening. Am I on? Yes. Hi, Todd Lofgren. I'm the Deputy Director of Portland Parks and Recreation. Thanks for having me this evening. Just to confirm what Dan has said, it's a priority for us to do this as soon as possible. We've been working with the PPS leadership team to identify the appropriate funding arrangements so all the necessary resources are able to go forward. We're confident with the PPS project team to lead the project, and we'll have our proportional share for Portland Parks and Recreation to pay for.
Awesome, awesome. I just have a question.
Sure.
And I don't know if you can answer this or some higher ups.
Sure.
So when we talk about permitting and stuff, we're going to make sure this is a high priority for the city as far as needing permits and things as well, right?
I'm happy to bring that back for sure.
All right, okay.
I'm also curious, has the Parks Commissioner or the council authorized Parks to negotiate, or the city attorney to negotiate a legally binding agreement or a lease with the district?
Right, so we have a partnership agreement already between Portland Public Schools and Portland Parks and Recreation for shared use of facilities. So many of your sports teams, as you know, use our golf courses or pools or tracks, sports fields, parks for cross-country, tennis courts, lots of different facilities and parks. Likewise, we use your facilities for things like Golden Ball, youth basketball programs, volleyball programs. It's really important. The lack of indoor gym space is important here in the city. So we have a legally binding agreement where we could memorialize this arrangement in that, or the Parks Director also has authority to enter into real estate arrangements as well.
Yeah, just speaking for myself, the current agreement landed us where we are, so it seems, and also just knowing, having visibility to the grant community's interest in making more investments in the facilities, again, lights, potentially stadium, it would be better to have there to be some certainty versus having it exist in the agreement and potentially having something similar happen or not be able to move ahead with their longer term plans and not being able to have a home field.
Right.
And I think I would say this also for the Benson community, that when they move back on site, that they would also want this uncertainty because they've actually in some ways had it worse than Grant, in that they have two other entities that have a significant amount of time blocked off on what would be considered like literally their field in their backyard. And it seems like a longer term reset is the right thing to do, and that the current agreement really is not the right place, I'm just speaking for myself, the right place to do that, because it doesn't provide the school community with the certainty that they will actually either get a track built in the case of Ensign, or that if they made the improvements, they'd have the ability to utilize them or even move it through the approval process.
We're open to any ideas that maximize use for student athletes and the community. We're really looking for the relationships where we have shared use of facilities, where the broader community can benefit from them from a Portland Parks and Recreation kind of service perspective, but then it meets all of PIL's needs as well. So if there's some other arrangement that kind of meets that need of the 1 + 1 = 3 type of arrangement, we're open to those ideas.
Oh, great, because they're coming.
All right, great.
All right.
That's what everyone wants to hear,
Yeah,
especially
here
the
we
kids
go.
back here.
Yeah, and I think the complicating thing is that when our high schools were first built 100 years ago, you only had half the, you didn't have women or young women or girls playing sports, so you have twice as many. And so just the usage, and if you know this from my daughter being at Cleveland, like trying to squeeze in all the sports, girls and boys, all the levels, one field isn't enough. And this is where it becomes like there's really during the school year not a lot of extra time. And so in any sort of arrangement, then it's more of, whether it be weekends or this part of the summer. But there's not a lot left over when you get through with a school community's use of if they just have one decent field or track.
All right, thank you, Director Brim-Edwards. Ms. Bradshaw, is there any public comments? And before you do that, I do want to thank you, Todd and Dan. Before we do the public comments, I do want to make sure we recognize the grant principal, James McGee, and want to invite him if he wants to come down and say anything as well. I've been purposely putting people on the spot today.
Absolutely. First of all, I just want to thank everyone with the swiftness that you've taken on this issue. I know that we're appreciative that the field will be rebuilt in the track. That being said, I have to say, and it's still not enough. Until we have lights in stadium, our student athletes, and we have to remember that student part, are at a disadvantage. Today, I had a brief conversation with some of the girls on our soccer team just before they got on the bus to go across town to play a home game. They missed their last period. And even with the new field and the new track, that will not change. And so some of those young ladies, they missed their math class, they missed English, their favorite elective. And so, we have the space and we have committed school community. And this doesn't just, work for the grant community, it works for all PPS. Because, I've been to Franklin for track meets, I've been to Wells for events. And so, this is something that will benefit the entire district. But we need to bring our kids back home. We're celebrating our 100th school year at Grant High School. And over the past summer, I gave tours to some of our alums who had not seen the modernized Grant. And back in July, I was giving a tour to some of the members of the class of '88, and it was the 35th class reunion. And one of their fathers came as well, because he wanted to see the modernized building. And I give a full tour, including the bowl, and I talk about my dream, of seeing, bleachers out there on lights so we can keep our kids, on campus. And, and the father came to me afterwards of that alum and said, Mr. McGee, I made varsity when I was a sophomore, and I never played one home game here at Grant. Keep fighting. And so I'm here representing that individual, that father, but I'm also here representing the generations of Grantonians that have traveled to Lincoln, what was then Madison, Marshall, even the Civic Stadium to play home games. I'm here representing these students that sit behind me that miss class, their last period class to play a home game. And I'm representing that 4th and 5th grader out there who are future Grantonians, so that they too will be able one day to be able to play home game, in the bowl. So again, I thank you for your attention to this matter.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. Bradshaw, do we have any public comments?
We do. We have Kim McGarr and Virginia Jones Laforte.
Thank you. I'm the parent of a senior at Grant who plays on the soccer team and a member of the Grant Bowl Community Coalition, which was formed by Grant parents less than a month ago after the shocking closure of the Grant Bowl one day before fall sports began. I urge you to pass this resolution after amending it to make clear that the long-term improvements to the Grant Bowl must include lights and stands, the Grant Master Plan that was developed in 2020. Grant's student body has long been neglected by the Parks Department. It has had inadequate athletics facilities for decades, largely due to Parks' incompetence and intransigence. If PPS had control of the Grant Bowl, our teams would be playing there right now. I trust that. PPS has proven itself to be a good steward of its turf fields. Parks ownership has been untenable for decades, but this latest failure and the complete lack of urgency or even care from Parks at the loss of Grant's home turf must be the final straw. PPS must take control of Grant's home field. The suggestion by Parks tonight, this is the first time they've even mentioned that they have $1 to put towards this field, that this status quo arrangement continue is utterly unacceptable. It is the definition of insanity to keep doing the same thing and expect different results. We must have the lease. The loss of the Grant Bowl is harming our students every single day. The soccer teams are now forced to play all of their games at Delta Park. They must leave school at 2:15. The men's and women's teams will collectively, I've done the math, miss 463 hours of instructional time just this month to play their home games, not to mention when they have to go on the road. It will be well over 1,000 hours of lost instructional time for the season. And the women's teams must also practice at Delta, which means 1 hour every day in traffic. Just in September, this is 11 hours per player, 480 hours collectively that those players could be doing homework or something unproductive. The varsity football team has to play their games at Marshall High School, far from our campus. And yes, this has been happening for years. That doesn't make it right. They will also, the JV was at least able to play in the bowl until it was closed. They now have to go to Marshall as well. They will miss school to go to play in a home game. And that total is 150 hours. We are talking thousands of hours of missed instructional time for our students. My daughter is a senior on the soccer team. She will have played most of her games over her 4 years at Delta Park. Same for the men's teams. They're here. They came here today from Delta Park, from their home game, to tell you that there is no working scoreboard. Parks has one, but it isn't set up, and our requests to be able to use it have fallen on deaf ears. Students can't come to watch unless they have a car, and they can barely make the game times anyway from Grant with traffic. I want to also say that I fully support the addition of the Buckman track to the resolution. My kids played at PCU early on. I've run on that track. It's a disgrace, and Buckman has been treated just as badly as Parks by Parks as Grant.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
That buzzer scared me. I'm glad you went first. Now I know to expect it. My name's Virginia Laforte. It's L-A space F-O-R-T-E, and I hope that doesn't count against my time. I'm a co-founder of the Grant Bowl Community Coalition. Our organization has two goals: to fix Grant's Field immediately and to work towards the implementation of the Grant Bowl Master Plan. I'm also the proud parent of a Grant High School senior and another child that will be a general next year. We've lived a half a mile from Grant for 13 years. On behalf of the coalition and the over 1,000 neighbors, parents, and students that responded to our survey in less than 72 hours when the Grant Bowl was closed just over 3 weeks ago, we unequivocally support PPS's goal to secure a long-term lease specific to the Grant Bowl from Portland Parks. We also support the implementation of the Grant Bowl Master Plan, which includes the installation of lights and seating to align with every other PPS high school. The coalition received a copy of Mark Cotton's written public statement. He is here tonight with his wife. He's the young man behind me at the end of the third row. Mark Cotton may sound familiar because if you look at the Portland Parks website, the Grant Bowl is actually the Mark Cotton Field. Mark was hired as a classroom teacher and head coach at Grant in 1962. It was over 60 years ago. He served in that capacity until 1990, 28 years he was there. Mark writes, From the very first day, I found that an improvement of the substandard field was a problem. If I asked the Parks Department for a minor improvement, they would reply that that was for a school activity. If I then asked the school district for an addition, they would reply that it was on Park Department property. Neither would object if I asked, can it be done privately? As a result, such things as a concrete discus throwing ring were installed by myself and several athletes. Mark went on to initiate the fundraising for the first regulation-sized track at Grant so they could hold its first home track meet in May of 1976. It's our 100-year anniversary this year. So anyway, in 2013, the turf was installed after 13 years of fundraising. Mark raised, sorry, I messed up. I'm just going to start over that paragraph because it's such a good story. So Mark went on to initiate the fundraising for the first regulation-sized track at Grant so we could hold our first home track meet in May of 1976. Who chipped in the least? Parks. In 2013, the turf was installed after 13 private years of fundraising. Who chipped in the least? Parks. Who gets to collect the permitting fees for the property? Parks. Who gets to shut down these properties that are gifts from the community because they can't maintain them? Parks. As Mark writes, we've been spoon-feeding this baby for 100 years. It's time to adopt it. The Grant Bowl Community Coalition respectfully asks that the board amends the resolution to call out the Grant Bowl Master Plan specifically in the agreement. Literally, can I go a little bit longer?
You got 10 seconds.
Okay, 99% of parents, students, and community members responded to our survey. They support it. We have 2,200 students in our school building. They want it. We're the only 6A high school in the state of Oregon without lights. We're the only PPS high school without lights and seating. And now, thanks to Parks, we don't have a field. We support you. We want to fix the field. We want to build the bowl. One team, one dream.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, all right. So here's a moment of truth. Here we go. Who?
Chair Hollings, can I just reflect on something that came up and make a suggestion? There was a suggestion that we amend the resolution. Since board members haven't had a chance to see the master plan or become familiar with it, I'm wondering if, as an alternative path, that it could be brought to the Finance and Operations Committee and the Finance and Operations Committee or Facilities and Operations Committee make a recommendation on that after people have had a chance to review it.
Yes, we can do that.
Do we need to make any
All right.
It's
No,
not that
we
in the
just gonna
motion,
bring
just
it to the
I want to
FNO committee.
acknowledge the request, but also think that there's another pathway there, and I don't think it'll be delayed.
All right, all right. So when the board will now vote on resolution 6755, resolution to replace the Grant Bowl and Buckman Field track for the use of Grant and Benson High School students. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
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 All right. All opposed? All right. Student Director Silverman? Silverstein?
First of all, I just want to say thank you to all the students that came out. This means a lot. Like, that is amazing that you did this. I'm a student athlete as well. Okay, I'm a student athlete as well, so definitely the missing class resonates with me, and that is crazy, that additional amount of time. That is a lot of classwork you all are making up, so thank you. Yes.
Thank you, thank you.
Oh, Gary, is it possible, I know we didn't add to our resolution about the Grant Bowl Master Plan. Is that something we can do later, or what's?
Yeah, so that's what Director Burnett was alluding to,
Okay.
that we bring it to the FNO committee and then we can bring it back up here. That way everybody that was seeing what that
Okay.
is.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. All right, and there any abstentions? All right, the resolution passed with a vote of 7-0 with student director saying yes. It is passed. Thank you. All right, next we turn to public comment. Please make sure when you begin your comments that you clearly state your name and spell your last name. You will have 3 minutes and 30 seconds to speak. You will hear a sound after 3 minutes and 30 seconds, which means it's time to end your comments. And, hold on. If you have any additional materials or items you would like to provide to the board or superintendent, we ask that you email them to public comments, all one word, at pps.net. Public comments at pps.net. Please make sure when you begin your comments that you clearly state your name and spell your last name. Carrie, do we have any public comments today?
We do. We have Rand Collar, Stacy Ozer, Lenny Wetmore, and Alyssa Kajawa. I'm so sorry.
All right. Can all of those people come to the
Kajikawa.
dais, stands? All right, all right. Everybody come on down, come on down. All right, whoever wants to start, go ahead and start with your name and state your last name, and the time will start. You will have 3 minutes and 30 seconds.
Hi, thank you for everything you're doing for Grant. What an amazing statement of community this whole night has been. Okay, I'm Rand, last name Kaller, K-A-L-L-E-R, and I'm a member of the Scott Elementary School community. Good evening. Happy back to school season. This season in elementary schools has a lot of magic to it, with first days of school remembered with fondness and fright for years to come. But just a reminder that this performance is not unlike opening night of a Broadway show. Only a fraction of the work is visible, and the hours backstage and beforehand are countless and unsung. Last week, I spent several afternoons volunteering in a classroom that was 82 degrees, reassured that it was the good classroom as the one across the hall was 87. When I arrived, I was joining a host of teachers who consistently had already been there for 8 hours, and we worked side by side to set up for the first day until the building closed at 8. While this is a heartwarming sign of devotion teachers have to their students, it is also a heartbreaking story of neglect for the well-being of those who serve our children. Depending on the survey you refer to, nationally, teachers average anything from 54 to 60 hours a week, the extra mostly unpaid. When working before the school year starts, I would go so far as to say the majority is unpaid, time eaten away by meetings, trainings, prepping curriculums, without time to devote to readying their own room. By contract, only 1.5 days of classroom preparation are paid, but note is made that teachers must have access to classrooms, quote, at minimum 1 week prior to the first workday. Implicit in this wording is a known unspoken agreement that classroom setup takes much longer than the allotted time, and that teachers are expected to do this on their own time. Throughout all this, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that teachers are currently working without a contract. I'm here to implore you to approach the bargaining table in good faith. The requests are not grandiose, things like full janitorial team staffing to deal with mice in classrooms, spaces for de-escalation of students in crisis, appropriate caseloads in special education, reasonable class sizes, and raises that keep pace with inflation. Portland is now the second least affordable city in America for a teacher to live in, second only to San Francisco. The numbers are in, over 100 vacancies for years on end at the beginning of the school year. You cannot staff schools where teachers cannot afford to work. These are not wants, they are needs. These teachers go so far above and beyond already, they need more than the minimum from you. I leave you with this. 3 minutes is not a lot of time to give you to paint a true picture of the life of a teacher, but when was the last time you were on your feet for 12 hours in 80 degrees for days in a row for something just because you believed in it, when no one paid you or lauded you or noticed you because you thought students deserved great classrooms? One of the many truisms I hear around Scott Elementary is, quote, students do well when they can. I would argue teachers do well when they can too. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, thank you.
Hello, my name is Stacy Ozer, O-Z-E-R, and I'm a member of the community, Harrison Park community. I came before the board in June asking for the school board to intervene to explore the option of keeping the Harrison Park Community Garden open during the construction, and I proposed a very viable option to fence off the east end of the existing garden and have the construction company use the west end of the area to stage equipment. The garden area runs from southeast 84th Street to 87th. That's 3 blocks long. Plenty of space for both the existing half of the garden with raised beds to remain and the additional flat grass area to be used for construction equipment. However, I've digressed into a simple solution that is a win-win for all, and I'm repeating what I proposed in June. I might remind you that when the Grant High School was remodeled, not only did the community garden remain open, it was actually expanded. Now I'm back to express absolute frustration and dismay at the fact that I and the community were lied to by PPS Real Estate Department. The woman I spoke with told me and erected a professionally made signs at the garden that the garden needed to close by June 13th, 2023 due to the remodel of Harrison Park School. Ms. White told me the construction company would need to use the garden space this summer and it therefore would need to be closed off. However, the locks I put on the garden gates, and I went there again today, are the locks that remain there that I put on. There was and continues to be absolutely no reason to have closed the garden. The construction that occurred throughout the summer has had absolutely no impact on the community garden area, and anyone with a lock to the key to the lock can freely access it. The garden area is now an overgrown mess of weeds that is quite the fire hazard. Well over 25 families were forbidden from growing thousands of pounds of food this summer because PPS decided they didn't want people gardening there. That was it. The community and these families were betrayed, and I feel like I greatly failed these families, and then I told them that we couldn't garden there because the construction companies were going to use the space. That didn't happen, and it was a lie. When I reached out to PPS in August to further inquire, I was told that the woman in charge had no intention of ever allowing gardening there again by anyone. It will be a field of grass, and if Portland Parks and Rec and Apano want another garden, it will have to be on an existing PPR land somewhere else on Harrison Park School property. What I want to know from you, the Portland Public School Board, is who has the authority to decide what PPS property can be used for? Is it within Dana White's authority to ban gardening at Harrison Park School? If it is not, can we begin revitalizing the garden space to begin gardening again? It's not too late for families to grow fall and overwintering crops. Thank you for your care and concern about the residents of the Harrison Park School and community.
Hello, my name is Elisa Kajikawa, K-A-J-I-K-A-W-A. I'm also here to talk about the community garden at Harrison Park. I am the community development manager for the Jade District at Apano. I am here both as an employee of Apano and as a concerned community member to talk about this closure. As many of you know, we have been advocating for the Harrison Park Community Garden since April, and today is just a reminder that we have not forgotten it and we have not given up. Unfortunately, the community garden is now closed, dry, and overgrown, and seemingly will never reopen to the community. I recently had a conversation with Dana White, Director of Planning and Real Estate, and Dan Young, Chief Operating Officer. From this conversation, it is clear that the business and operations arm of PPS does not want any community gardens on any PPS properties now or ever. The Harrison Park Community Garden was one of the Jade District's first community projects back in 2013. Oregon Community Foundation and the Collins Foundation were major contributors to the fundraising effort for this garden. With so much community buy-in, including PPS 10 years ago, it is incredibly disappointing to see the closure of an important resource without any community involvement, input, or without any solution. Harrison Park School is the home school for two of the most diverse census tracts in Oregon. According to the 2021 American Community Survey, out of the almost 19% of residents who live below the poverty line in the Harrison Park area, 22.5% are children under 18, and 34.5% are seniors 65 or over. In Harrison Park Schools area, 59% of residents are foreign born, and 43.5% are renters. Many of the gardeners at the Harrison Park Community Garden were from immigrant backgrounds, growing culturally specific and relevant produce. Many of the gardeners were renters without their own outside space. Community gardens can help fill a gap for many families who are living with food insecurity, especially now that most, if not all, of the extra pandemic benefits have stopped. Community gardens on PPS properties can also be a great community building and educational opportunity. Think about the cross-cultural and intergenerational learning experiences that can come out of community gardens, sharing space with PPS schools. PPS's mission is to, quote, disrupt racial inequities to create vibrant environments for every student to demonstrate excellence. Here is a great real-world situation where PPS can step up and show the community that they are committed to disrupting racial inequities inside and outside the classroom. That PPS understands that what happens outside school affects what happens inside. Here is a golden opportunity for PPS to demonstrate community care and that they also want to help with the overall well-being of the communities they are part of. No matter what happens with the current site, we plan to continue to advocate for the community garden space in Harrison Park School's home area. I urge the board and all of PPS to take responsibility and accountability for the repercussions of ending a community program without working with community first, and help past and future gardeners sow seeds of their cultures to nourish their families and communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we will have first reading of revisions to 3.10.031/P class size guidelines and school staff allocation policy, and for the rescission of 3.60.040-P nutrition service, meals pricing and purchasing policy. Hold on one second though, would you mind? Sir, I think we've all read this. I'm just asking. The sign you have, I would appreciate if you could take it down. If you, it's not your choice. I'm not saying you have to, sir. Hold on, hear me clearly. I'm just asking you to. I think everyone's seen the sign. I agree with that. I'm just asking. It's my right to ask too. Okay, I hear you. I hear you. Just an ask. You can say no. Okay, you can say no. That's all I was asked. All right, thank you. All right, it's on you.
Thank you, Chair Hollins. So the policy committee is forwarding two proposed items to the full board for first reading. The first is a rescission of the nutrition services meal pricing and purchasing policy. And I mean, at first glance, you read the policy and it, you might ask, why are we recommending that we rescind this? And the reality is this policy was written in a time period in which there were a different set of state and federal laws. And since that time, and at the time, the board felt very strongly that their students should always be given a meal, regardless of whether they could afford to or not, that we wouldn't have lunch shaming occurring, and so we put it into policy. This policy also has the board being the entity that sets the prices for meals. And the reason why we don't need this policy anymore is state and federal law has caught up with PPS. And so this is just a duplication of state and federal law now. Again, at the time, PPS felt very strongly that some of the practices that happened in lunchrooms across the country, and in some cases across our district, that we want to have that reflect our values, that all students should have access to school lunches. But fortunately, we don't need any more, so we're recommending that we rescind it just because it's unnecessary. It just restates federal and state law. The second policy before you is a change to a very short policy relating to class sizes. And essentially, the initial policy originally said the board directs the superintendent to determine school staff allocations and class size guidelines for the district and communicate that information to all district administrators. And we've added a sentence that recognizes that in some cases in the past, class sizes and guidelines and staffing allocation was done differently for neighborhood schools as it was for focus programs and dual immersion programs, and that this is adding a clause to the current policy that indicates that as much as possible, we should have alignment across neighborhood schools and these other programs. In both of these cases, these policies were recommended for first reading, or also known as introduction, unanimously. And so with that, we can get them started in the process for the first reading and then the public comment period.
Thank you, Director Edwards. The policy proposed to be revised or rescinded will be posted on the board website, and the public comment period is a minimum of 21 days. Contact information for public comment will be posted with the policy. The board expects to hold a second reading of the revised policies, to which a vote to approve them on October 10th, 2023.
Chair Hollins. I have a Chair Hollins.
And I'm sorry, I'm looking for you on the dais.
I'm sneaking up behind you.
Yes. Yes, Director
A quick
Scott.
question, and I may have turned off my video because, again, my internet's a little bit wonky. Director Brim Edwards, on the class size policy, I was a little confused in terms of what exactly it's asking the superintendent district to do. And I guess the reason why is, it's said to align them with neighborhood classrooms. But of course, as we know, our neighborhood class sizes are a pretty wide range. And we have some very, very small class sizes, and we have some neighborhoods that are, close to max or even at max. And then, of course, we have an average, which is just the mathematical thing. And so just when I read through the policy, and I didn't have a chance to watch the committee meeting, when I read through the policy, it wasn't clear to me, are we asking them to align with the averages? Are we asking them to have focus option programs at the max or something else?
Director Scott, it's a great question. And I will say there's a little bit of art and science to this, and we tried not to be overly prescriptive. As you may recall, the case was that neighborhood schools, their staffing occurred based on a staffing allocation that was set by the district. And depending on how many students showed up in the school, those class size thresholds and the staffing allocations worked. On the other hand, at focus programs and dual immersion programs, the principals were setting the class size thresholds. And so really what this, without being too prescriptive or directive, because there are some nuances that need to be, there are at play here, but generally it's a policy and a value statement that we should generally ask that whether you're a focus or a dual immersion program or neighborhood school, that we have the superintendent setting those class sizes and staffing allocations versus an individual school deciding what theirs were. And again, there was a brief discussion about the language programs and some of the complications relating to staffing, because they usually start out at lower numbers because we have lower thresholds for our younger grades. But what happens in immersion is usually students, you get fewer students as they get in higher grades, and how do you balance that out? And instead of being really prescriptive, more it's we want the superintendent and staff to be setting direction versus an individual principal making decisions on how many staff they should get.
Great, thank you. That's a really helpful explanation. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Awesome. Okay, we're going to next move on the agenda. It's time to provide board committees and conference reports. Our committee work is underway, and this past month, policy, student success, facilities and operations committees have met. So I'll start with Director Brim Edwards, then Director Wang, and then I'll wrap up with
I have an update from the audit committee as well.
Okay, with Director DePass. All right, you want to go first?
Are we
right.
alphabetized?
You're up.
Okay, I just wanted to give a brief report. So we have not had our first meeting yet. It was tentatively scheduled for the 20th of September. I have one board member that needs to respond back whether they're available on the 27th at 5. I wanted to share out that the auditor's performance evaluation is finally complete, and it's been signed by myself and the senior auditor and turned in. The next steps it's been sent to HR. The next steps are I will share that out in the audit committee, and if anyone on the board is interested in seeing it, reviewing it, I'm happy to share that as well. And I would also love to have a student on the audit committee. I don't have a formal process to lay out, but it would be great to have student representation. And you don't need auditing experience, but you need to be curious and interested in the workings of the organization, I think, to be successful. And able to meet, we're having 4 meetings this year. And that's it.
Thank you. Thank you.
So it looks like our first meeting will hopefully be on the 27th of September, if all of the members can make it.
Okay, thank you. Director Wong, Student Success Committee.
Oh, I'm up, huh? Okay. So we've had a couple, one meeting already, and just basically just identifying the big issues we want to tackle throughout the year. So I guess part of the role of the Student Success Committee is just kind of 2 things. One is just kind of oversee the programs and policies that are in place and evaluate their effectiveness. But also, number 2, if it ever comes to it, recommend a policy to the policy committee. So right now, I guess, there's 100 things we want to do, but we only had time for, it's only a year. So only a time for like maybe 3 or 4 things. And the things that really came up with are the 3 things we want to tackle, seems like we want to tackle are, number 1 is graduation requirements. And also part of that is also expanding different types of options for graduation. Like, for example, one thing that was brought up was possibly implementing JROTC programming and also other types of certificates for different programs. That's something we're looking at. And also our current graduation requirement. Another thing that came up was also just one thing we really want to oversee is middle school programming and making sure it's equitable across our district. One of the goals of staff this year is trying to get all the middle schools to a 5 of 7 format. That's classes, where 7 periods, teachers teach 5. That way it has more flexibility in terms of like advisory as well as PE, which we feel is very important, both of them. And the last 2 things, I said 3, but can you amount to 4? I can't count tonight. It's been a long day. What was the looking at, the hot topic of the day, equitable grading practices, which also includes assessments. And we're getting a report on that in our next meeting. And also the last thing is also looking at our special education programming as well. And we're getting a report on that as well. And also to mirror what Director DePass asked for, we want to also would like to have some students on our committee because this is about them and their voice is of utmost importance. So shout out to anybody who is interested, please reach out. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Wong, and I'm sure Student Director Silverstein is taking notes. I seen her over there writing down, so you guys should be expecting some shortly. We have Director DePass. I'm looking at you thinking about her.
We're often confused.
All right, Director Brim Edwards.
Thank you, Chair Hollins. So we're starting to build out our committee agenda and policies we brought forward for consideration. We'll be bringing forward policies, changes required by law. We're still waiting for so the dust to settle in the legislative session and what those are. Policies suggested by staff, rescissions of policies that are no longer needed, for example, like the nutrition services one tonight, working on ones from previous years, like the class size one tonight. Another example would be the one related to private fundraising for staff. And I want to just clarify for those who ask about that, the policy that was posted at the last meeting, which was just a informational post, it was a draft policy relating to foundation funding for PPS staff. The discussion on this
Testing, testing.
We're doing a test to make sure our mics work. We want to first say thank y'all to everybody that's sticking it out with us. This is my continued talking actually gives them time in the back to make sure that what I'm doing is actually working. And at the same time, it appreciates you for being here so that we all know that we're in this together and the strain is getting to us. And Dr. Wong, can you hear me as well? Because he couldn't hear me before either. Dr. Wong can hear me.
Yes.
Can the people in the back hear me? Hey. Now, if you're with me, say, hey. Okay. Oh, okay.
There you go, students. There we go. Okay, we back in order, right? All right. We go see. We go give it another shot. All right, so the board will now again try to vote on the consent agenda. Board members, if there's any items, well, you guys heard that already. Ms. Bradshaw, is there any changes to the consent agenda?
No.
Board members, are there any items? No, we already said that again. Do I have a motion and second to adopt the consent agenda?
Motion.
Second.
Okay.
She beat you to it.
All right, is there any board discussion on the consent agenda? All right, I do want to make a note, and I want to thank the staff for putting the numbers on the bottom of the consent agenda. I know me and Director Sullivan appreciate that, so we can kind of really get a sense of where our money is going and how it's going. The board will now vote on resolution 6753 through 6754. All in favor indicate by saying yes.
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 All opposed indicate by saying no. Student Director Silverstein.
Yes.
All right. By a vote, any abstentions? All right. The consent agenda is approved by a vote of 6-0, with Student Director Silverstein, unofficial, voting yes. And it has passed 6-0. All right, we're done with that. All right. Now we're going to have comments from our union partners. Come on down. Yep, everybody just come on down since we trying to get out of here by 8, so we ain't gonna make that. We ain't gonna make that deadline. So come on in. That's out all the way. Okay.
All the way out.
All right. We're going to start with a letter directed to the superintendent and you all. Dear Guadalupe Guerrero and the member of the Portland Public Schools Board of Education, we believe the purpose of education should be to foster growth, enlightenment, and empowerment. Therefore, it is deeply disturbing to observe widespread sexual harassment coupled with racial discrimination in our schools. Instead of embracing and acting upon PPS's stated core values of honesty and integrity, the district has responded to complaints of sexual harassment by dismissing the lived reality of victims, often retaliating against the people who speak openly about the harm they experienced. Although PPS claims to foster safe, positive workspaces, its inaction not only perpetuates a cycle of fear and oppression, but also undermines the very foundation of care and trust upon which education should be built.
At
The July 11th board meeting, on behalf of PPS workers and students, SCI union members made the following demands to address the problem of systemic sexual harassment. These were the district's responses. First, SEIU demanded that the district follow its own current sexual harassment policy to protect workers. On July 13th, in an internal email to SEIU leadership, Senior Director of Employee Labor Relations Genevieve Rove responded, quote, "You care more about publicity and sowing division between SEIU members and the district than you care about the safety and well-being of staff who have made complaints." The next day, on July 14th, Chief Human Resource Officer Sharon Reese sent a district-wide email claiming, quote, "We work with any staff member reporting sexual harassment to ensure their immediate and ongoing safety. We will investigate thoroughly and take disciplinary action to redress misconduct." While Reese's statement purports to protect workers, when paired with Rose, it sends a clear message that HR is unwilling to acknowledge the problem and protect the safety of workers facing daily violence. This is deeply hurtful to victims, and it's dismissive of those who bravely come forward with sexual harassment claims. 2, SEIU demanded that the district provide thorough and meaningful in-person sexual harassment prevention training as soon as possible. PPS management has not communicated any such plans thus far to provide this training. Third, SEIU demanded that PPS conduct an independent district-wide audit and share the information gathered with all PPS unions. Instead, the district hired management-side lawyer, a lawyer whose job it is to protect school districts, Rebecca Jacobson, to investigate only new claims. To date, none of the many complaints which spurred SEIU to speak out at the school board meeting have been thoroughly investigated.
Let's push that back a little. Despite workers repeatedly coming forward publicly with personal testimonies of sexual harassment at PPS, no one in management has acknowledged the systemic nature of the sexual violence at PPS, let alone sought to address the issue. This further traumatizes victims and creates a culture where silence feels safer than coming forward and risking retaliation. There are documented cases of the district firing workers after coming forward with complaints and communications from human resources that deny the lived experiences or realities of victims. This has a chilling effect on others coming forward. Following the July 11th board meeting, SEIU met with Genevieve Rowe in order to follow up on the union's initial demands. Although Rowe claimed that it is that, quote, "this is not the culture we want," end quote, she failed to take accountability for the prevalence of sexual harassment at PPS. She claimed that she was, quote, "surprised to hear about these cases," end quote. Only a few weeks after this meeting, SEIU became aware of another female custodian who was terminated a few days after reporting harassment by her manager. Due to the district's failure to provide the basic rights and safety of its staff and students, we call upon Superintendent Guerrero and the Board of Directors to immediately take the following actions. First, investigate and hold accountable the PPS Human Resources Employee and Labor Relations Department for failing to follow board policy and federal law to ensure the safety of workers who report sexual harassment. Second, immediately implement meaningful in-person sexual harassment prevention training for all district employees, including contractors and administrators. Third, hire an independent auditor who is pre-approved by the union coalition. This auditor should be charged to review all cases of sexual harassment that are on record since Guadalupe Guerrero became the superintendent and any new cases that arise while the audit is being performed. The audit should include an analysis of the response from the Human Resources Department to each case in order to determine where PPS is in violation of its own policy and/or local, state, and federal laws. The final report should be delivered to PPS and the coalitions at the same time.
If Superintendent Guerrero fails to follow these steps and hold his subordinates accountable, it is the responsibility of the school board of directors to hold the superintendent accountable. PPS is failing its students and staff by ignoring its own policies and instead dismissing, investigating, and/or punishing those who speak out. This is completely unacceptable and must be addressed immediately. As unions representing custodians, paraeducators, nutrition services workers, maintenance staff, administrative assistants, security services personnel, educators, counselors, and many other workers at PPS, we stand in solidarity with the students and staff who endure sexual harassment in our schools. We have a right to schools and workplaces that are free of all forms of harassment and discrimination, and we will continue to raise our voices until PPS takes responsibility for the harm that it has caused and can guarantee the safety of all of its workers and students. Please take the above actions to make this happen. And this is signed by the members of our coalition.
Excuse me, I want to ask a question. Did we get a copy of that letter?
Oh, yeah, we've got lots of copies.
Okay.
Coming right up.
PFSP stands in support of the SEIU request for change and accountability in addressing and resolving workplace sexual harassment. Employees and students must be provided serious, comprehensive in-person training and schooling to change the culture. We need to provide supports to those coming forward, give them positive, safe working environments. We need to identify those areas and situations where sexual harassment is being repeatedly reported. These people need to know they can expect rapid response to their complaints and be assured they are not expected to return to dangerous work sites. PFSP has reached out to our affiliates at AFT Oregon and the Oregon School Employees Association for further collaboration to see if we can come up with some suggestions and work with legislators to come up with some reforms. Thank you.
Okay. So I just wanted to also, it's like surround sound. I wanted to also point out, I know for the Portland Association of Teachers, we brought this letter to our executive board and it was voted, we voted unanimously to sign this and put the full support of our union behind those who have been victimized. I also wanted to make sure to give y'all some other remarks, if that's cool. Great. Good evening. As you all know, my name is Angela Bonilla. I'm the president of the Portland Association of Teachers, representing about 3,200 educators here in PPS. Some kudos. Thanks for bringing back Claire Hertz to support with bargaining budget questions. We were saddened to hear that Chief Delgadillo has moved on. We wish him the best, but we appreciate PPS management's team bringing in someone who has previous experience with our district so we can continue negotiations. Kudos to the facilities and the staff folks at Ida B. Wells Barnett High School. PAT educators have been advocating at meetings with administrators through grievances, complaints to OSHA, and organizing their members for heat mitigation. There are 22 classrooms at Wells that are extremely hot. For example, one educator shared that when the sun shines and it reaches about 70 degrees outside, her classroom reaches upwards of 80 to 98 degrees Fahrenheit inside, and that's with the shades drawn, multiple fans blowing. Facilities has been assessing the electrical, and they should be delivering 10 air conditioning units to the high school. So even though it's less than half of the classrooms that have the concern, we really, really appreciate the action by the facilities department and the district and our educators at Ida B. Wells Barnett High School for pushing that forward and not letting it fall to the wayside. And so I do want to bring up a quote that I think about a lot in my governance at PAT. So it's from Toni Morrison. When you get these jobs you have been so brilliantly trained for, just remember that your real job is that if you are free, you need to free somebody else. If you have some power, then your job is to empower somebody else. So I wanted to lift up some concerns that we're hearing in our building, so I'm gonna take a little time to do that. First, we're getting a lot of reports from schools with very large class sizes. So Lewis Elementary has class sizes higher than 30 students. Each fifth grade class has 32 students. In one of those sections, nearly 46 of those students have identified as having some sort of individualized learning plan, whether that is talented and gifted, or special education, or a temporary 504 plan. And there are several, when it's a small neighborhood school, lots of complex interpersonal situations that need to be navigated. And so it's really hard to do the work we are here to do in class sizes of that size without the support. And last year, one of those educators had 31 students in the 5th grade class with a similar spread of need. Whitman Elementary, whose student body is 14% Asian, 8% Black, and 30% Hispanic, has first, second, and third grade classrooms of 28 and 29 students, and fourth and fifth grade classes of 30 students. Kudos to the principal today who's working in the kitchen because they didn't have coverage, or they were working in the kitchen because they didn't have coverage. And this is really concerning. PAT has maintained that the wait and see approach to adding additional staff is harmful to students who spend the end of August and most of September building relationships and community, only to be redistributed between other classrooms once another educator is finally hired. We've argued that a maximum class size of 28 or 31 in first grade is too many. And so we are asking that y'all rebalance our classrooms with additional staff wherever we can in schools that have no other support staff outside of their administrators. I also am very glad that the district acted so quickly to support the Grant Bowl and the Buckman track. And I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention the issues with McDaniels Field and that it took 2 years and 2 seasons of students wasting, as the speaker said, over 1,000 hours of instruction time lost just to get to a home field. That field is almost done. I think it should be ready by the season this year, but it's a real bummer that the school that serves most of our schools on the 82nd corridor had to wait so long. And as soon as we heard about the problem at Grant, there was a solution and it was voted upon by the board. So I just want to make sure that we're being cognizant of that. Jefferson, also, we have been hearing a lot from educators and families at Jefferson. I have a lot of questions about construction and contracting, especially after what happened with McDaniel. I remember Director Constam saying, you know, we're going to talk to the contractors, we're going to find out what happened, and we want to make sure that we're holding those folks accountable and that we have real answers, because when it's public money and then our students have to lose instructional time just to participate as athletes, it's unacceptable. It's not okay for Grant, not okay for McDaniel, it's not okay for any school. And so at Jefferson, that community was promised the availability of their site during reconstruction. And the questions I've heard from folks are, why did that change? When did that change? And why are educators finding out about this from the news? You know, Jefferson shares a catchment with Roosevelt, McDaniel, and Grant. Right? So why would 9th grade students commute 11 miles to Marshall when they could go to the other high schools, most of which have been remodeled already? I'm really, really concerned that this will lead to lowered enrollment at Jeff over the lifetime of this project, and I worry that we will harm this school that has a really strong and rich history in Portland, in our Black community here in Portland. And so we wonder what other options there are besides busing students again. Right? It's not enough to remove Blanchard's name from the building. To repair the harm that was done when all those schools were closed in that community and students were bused across town under that tenure, we have to do things differently. So how are we going to keep this promise to students and communities and be able to keep them in their neighborhood during reconstruction so there aren't ripple effects on their enrollment moving forward? And then I just want to clear something up because, you know, we've been in the news. So despite the reporting in the news around a possible strike here in Portland Public Schools by PAT, we've been saying, you know, if it didn't come from Pat, don't believe that, right? I am, by our bylaws, the only spokesperson for the union. So if you're reading something that some educator said somewhere on the news, if it's not my name, it's not what you need to believe. You need to hear it from us. Because there's no surprise when it comes to strikes. It comes after hours and days and weeks of bargaining, of mediation, of substitutes for our bargaining team as part of and it's part of the bargaining process. We want a settlement. As a union of educators, we see that what educators need is linked with what our students need. And we have to push Portland Public Schools to invest where our educators and students need it most. I've shared our bargaining platform already with y'all, and you can always find it online. We have a bit.ly/PAT support, or it's on our website under our bargaining vision. We need small class sizes and caseloads, classrooms free of mold and rodents and between temperatures of 60 and 90 degrees, and mental health teams housed at each site, just to name a few of our urgent needs, because we believe that now is the time to invest in our schools. In the most recent slideshow on the 8th, it talked about we have a projected $51 million in our ending fund balance, and that was just, we added more once we got the additional funding from the state. The money needs to be invested now in our schools, in staff, and in services to support students. As educators and union members, we're gonna fight for our schools. We're gonna work with Portland families, with Portland unions, community allies, and we're gonna rally, and we're gonna organize, and we're gonna do what it takes to get this investment, because our schools and our students can't wait for great public schools. So that is what I want to make sure y'all understand, despite what the news says. We're gonna do what it takes to get that investment. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, thank you.
Hi, I'm Chris Walters. I am the head chef at McDaniel High School. I'm also one of their sports announcers. And my team and I served 727 meals in 33 minutes last Thursday.
Okay.
We now own the record for the most lunches served in the last decade in a single day. So it's been a year, and we're only 4 days in. On Friday, September 1st, we held our 9th bargaining session. PPS rejected all 4 of the union's proposals related to safety, non-discrimination, and the grievance procedure and personnel files. Management continues to push back against any meaningful improvements in our contracts, such as rejecting the union's proposals to include anti-discrimination, anti-racism, and anti-harassment protections. We were told that if employees disagree with management's handling of discrimination cases, then the only recourse workers have is to file a charge against PPS at BOLI. After 6 months of bargaining, no progress has been made on any of the union's priorities, such as safety, healthcare. We're still waiting 2 months for a response on that, I believe. Wages, inclement weather, or job assignments. And our bargaining period ends November 9th. We've got 8 more sessions between now and then scheduled. We've talked a lot about safe schools, clean schools, healthy, sustainable schools, schools that are part of the community. Management's been in the room when we've talked about this, but we don't feel that we've been heard. These aren't just slogans for us. We do believe in this. We want to see it happen, and there's 8 more sessions to get that sorted out. And if you all can help push, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. All right. Any other business? Any comments from the board members? All right, well, we will be adjourned. Thank you.